Imagine your body, a complex machine, humming along, performing its daily tasks. Now, picture something slowly, almost invisibly, gumming up the works from the inside. Not a sudden breakdown, not a virus, but a process happening right now, in every cell, making your organs stiff, brittle and less efficient. It's like a silent internal rust, building up year after year, until one day, the machine starts to sputter. That's the feeling, that dull ache you can't quite place, the brain fog that comes and goes, the energy dips that leave you drained. You push through it, tell yourself it's just getting older, or stress, or not enough sleep. But what if it's something far more fundamental, something that has been slowly, steadily, literally cooking your insides? I remember sitting across from Dr. Evans, the sterile office air, doing little to cool the sudden heat I felt rising in my chest. He wasn't talking about a disease in the usual sense, not a bug, not a genetic flaw. He was talking about something called Advanced Glycation End-products, or AGEs. He leaned forward, his voice calm, but the words hit me like a physical blow. "Your organs," he said, "are effectively caramelizing." Caramelizing. The word hung in the air, sweet and sinister. I thought of sugar, of desserts, of the warm, syrupy consistency of caramel. And then I thought of my own liver, my kidneys, my heart, slowly turning into that same sticky, rigid mess. It wasn't a metaphor. He explained how sugar molecules, when they interact with proteins and fats in the body without enzymes to control them, form these AGEs. And these AGEs, he continued, are like tiny shards, stiffening tissues, making blood vessels less elastic and damaging cells. They build up, layer by layer, over years, fueled by every sweet drink, every processed snack, every quick-fix meal. My mind raced, replaying countless meals, countless moments of comfort found in a sugary treat, each one a tiny contribution to this internal process. It wasn't a sudden illness. It was a slow, deliberate self-sabotage, an invisible war waged with every bite. The damage, he explained, was profound and in many ways irreversible. He said it plainly, without drama, just the cold, hard facts of biochemistry. A quiet realization settled over me, heavy and cold. The choices I had made, the things I had eaten, had not just added to my waistline or given me a temporary energy boost. They had fundamentally changed the structure of my internal organs. It was a slow, molecular transformation, turning living tissue into something hardened and inert. The sweetness of indulgence had indeed become the bitterness of decay. It was a stark, almost poetic justice. Every sugary comfort, every moment of easy pleasure had a hidden cost, a debt that was now coming due. Dr. Evans then looked at me, a serious expression on his face. "The clock is ticking," he said, but he didn't elaborate on what exactly that clock was ticking towards. Just a ticking clock, a sense of urgency, a deadline I couldn't yet see. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. My journey into this internal caramelization trap began subtly, almost innocently, right in childhood. Like many, I grew up in a world where sugary snacks and processed foods weren't just available. They were comforting staples. Supermarket aisles were overflowing with colorful boxes, promising joy in every bite. And school cafeterias often served up meals that leaned heavily on the sweet side. Think about it. Fruit juice instead of water, sugary cereals for breakfast, cookies as an afternoon reward. These weren't seen as threats. They were treats, badges of a happy childhood. Family dinners, too, often ended with some form of dessert, or at least a sweetened beverage. It was all so normal, so ingrained in daily life, that questioning it felt almost ungrateful. As I moved into my teenage years and then adulthood, these habits solidified. The early signs of metabolic stress were there, but they were easily dismissed. Frequent fatigue? Must be from staying up late studying. Unexplained weight gain. Probably just stress, or maybe I needed to hit the gym more, occasional brain fog. Definitely lack of sleep, right? These symptoms were never linked to the underlying biochemical assault of excessive sugar. I remember guzzling sugary sodas during late-night study sessions, convinced they were helping me focus. Energy bars became my go-to for a quick boost, and processed meals were the ultimate convenience when time was short. These choices weren't just personal preferences. They were reinforced by pervasive advertising that painted sugar as energy, as comfort, as a necessary part of a busy life. Social norms normalized high sugar intake to such an extent that trying to avoid it felt like an extreme act. Everyone ate this way, so it couldn't be bad. Could it? Beneath the surface, however, something more insidious was happening, a gradual erosion of vitality, a slow chipping away at my well-being. A growing dependence on sugar for mood regulation began to take hold. A bad day? A sweet treat would fix it, at least for an hour. Feeling sluggish, a candy bar would perk me up. This led to predictable cycles of energy crashes and intense cravings, a roller coaster my body became accustomed to. There was a subtle yet persistent feeling of being unwell, a vague sense that something wasn't quite right. This feeling was often masked by the temporary highs that sugar provided, creating a deep disconnect between my physical symptoms and their true dietary cause. I'd feel tired, then eat sugar, feel better for a bit, then crash harder. It was a vicious loop. The internal struggle to maintain energy and focus, despite what I thought was an adequate diet, hinted at deeper, unaddressed issues. My body was sending signals, but I wasn't listening, or rather, I didn't know how to interpret them. I just kept pushing through, reaching for the next sugar fix, unknowingly deepening the trap I was already in. This was life, I thought. This was normal. Everyone felt this way sometimes. But now, looking back, I realize it was my body slowly, silently, telling me that the sweetness of my past was becoming the bitterness of my present. Then came the turning point. Not with a sudden dramatic collapse, but with a routine medical checkup. The doctor, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes, reviewed my blood test results. Her expression shifted from polite to serious. She pointed to a few numbers on the screen, indicating pre-diabetes and early signs of organ dysfunction. That's when she introduced me to the term Advanced Glycation End-products. She explained it wasn't just about high blood sugar, it was about how that sugar was literally caramelizing my organs. She used the word caramelizing deliberately, to make the science hit home. She described how sugar molecules bind to proteins and fats, creating these sticky, harmful compounds that stiffen tissues, clog arteries, and damage everything from my kidneys to my eyes. It was a slow, internal cooking process, she said, and it had been going on for years. This wasn't a vague warning, it was a direct, unambiguous confrontation with the consequences of my past choices. The realization hit me hard. All those years of seemingly innocent indulgence, all those treats and conveniences had led to this critical health crisis. It wasn't just a matter of losing weight or feeling a bit sluggish. My very organs were being damaged from the inside out. This stark reality became the catalyst for drastic change. The antagonist, sugar, had finally lost its grip. I embarked on a rigorous sugar-free regimen, a complete overhaul of my diet. The initial withdrawal symptoms were intense: headaches, irritability, crushing fatigue. My body, accustomed to its constant sugar supply, screamed in protest. It felt like breaking a powerful addiction, which, in a way, it was. I craved everything sweet, my mind constantly returning to the comfort of a chocolate bar or a sugary drink. But I persisted. I learned to read labels meticulously, discovering hidden sugars in everything from bread to salad dressing. I cooked more, focusing on whole, unprocessed foods, plenty of vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats. Slowly, gradually, things began to shift. The intense cravings subsided. The constant fatigue that had become my normal started to lift. My mind, once foggy and sluggish, began to clear. I felt a renewed sense of energy, a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. Follow-up blood tests showed significant improvements. My blood sugar levels stabilized, and some of the early markers of organ stress began to recede. The doctor confirmed that while the damage from glycation was largely irreversible, you can't uncaramelize an organ. Its progression had been halted. My body, though scarred by years of abuse, was adapting to a new, healthier internal environment. There was no magical cure, no instant fix that wiped away decades of dietary choices. This wasn't a fairy tale. Instead, it was a profound shift in understanding and control. The battle against glycation became a lifelong commitment to dietary vigilance and informed choices. It meant saying no to tempting desserts, choosing water over soda, and always being aware of what I put into my body. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of weakness, but the memory of the doctor's words, the image of my organs slowly caramelizing, always brought me back. I learned to appreciate the natural sweetness of fruit, the satisfying crunch of fresh vegetables, and the sustained energy from a balanced meal. My body started to heal where it could, adapting to this new way of living. I had taken back control, not just of my diet, but of my future. The sweetest revenge, I realized, was a life reclaimed from the silent destruction of sugar.